This is part 2 of a tutorial that builds a knowledge base on the fly from text and then uses that knowledge base to parse that same text. This is useful for such tasks as Anaphora, and more specifically in this tutorial, resolving pronouns like he, she, etc. It is recommended that you watch part 1 of this video where I talk about the overall design of this analyzer. In this tutorial, I'm going to step through each pass in the analyzer sequence in detail, showing you how the rules, parse tree, and knowledge base work together in a very powerful way. Let's go. So let's take a look here at the sequence. The first thing we do is what I normally do is to set up the knowledge base. Here we're going to set up two very important global variables in the knowledge base. One is person, where we're going to put the persons Fred and Sally and keep track of who they are and what attributes we have. I call this the long-term memory. The short-term memory are the sentences, a place where we're going to put the sentence 1, sentence 2. We're going to keep track of only two things, the name and the pronouns. The reason is because I want to see where the names are in the text and where the pronouns. And when we find a pronoun, we go searching back in the previous sentences for the people that they're referring to, the names that they're referring to. So that's how I'm going to do this analyzer. If you want to set up a global variable in the analyzer, I have a special snippet. If you just type KB and then choose global, KB global, you can type in things like cars, and there we have it. We have cars in the global variable cars. And of course, we don't have cars in this analyzer, but that shows you how you can do that. Again, type KB and choose KB global. The second thing our second pass, or just a pass 3 here, we insert a library pass, and that library pass is at the top level. It's called KB funcs, and you add that to your analyzer, and you can see it has all kinds of useful functions that we're going to use throughout this analyzer. I put in a new pass called funcs for functions. Now these functions I have written. We have a number of functions. Display the KB, where we display the person in the sentences. We have add person. We have resolve pronoun, which we'll talk about later. We have lookup person, and we have add relationship and add attribute. Now these are my functions that I wrote for this particular analyzer. Since this text has one sentence per line, we're going to use the lines pass, which you can get from the library. Now that's located under formatting, so you can go to formatting and click on lines and insert that. Now what I've done is normally the lines rule pass does not have any post area, that is no post processing, but I added it to this particular version of the line because what I want to do is make a sentence place a temporary place in our knowledge base to hold information about each sentence. And we're going to use this function that is already provided in KB funcs, which is called make count con. Now what that does is it builds concepts underneath the parent concepts we pass. In this case, the sentences. Remember, that's our short-term area for sentences. And then it makes, each time it finds a line, it's going to make sentence 1, sentence 2, sentence 3, etc. So we can look at this knowledge base and see what that looks like. So I have pass 6 is simply to display the KB, which is the person and the sentences. So let's take a look at what that looks like here. All right, here we go. So you can see that we have person. There's nothing underneath it yet because we haven't done anything. And we have sentences that we built in our KB init. And then you notice we have sentence 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that comes from the text. Each time we match a line, we then make a sentence for that. And then really important, and you should have watched the other tutorials before this, is that we're going to make count con will return a concept, and we're going to save that concept under the name con on the line. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now let's take a look at the tree for lines here, and you're going to see that. So what we're doing is we built the lines, and we built a sentence 1 con here, and then we keep track in the tree a pointer to the concept or the knowledge base for sentence 1. Here's line with the pointer into the knowledge base for sentence 2. Again, this is sentence 2. Here's sentence 3. The line is pointing into the knowledge base. This allows us, when we're parsing the text, to have access of that line area for our temporary area. We're going to keep names and pronouns. The next thing we do is to remove the white space, because if you look at the text here, when we're in our tree, in our parse tree, you can see that we have all these spaces. So we're going to put a pass in called, a library pass called remove white space. And if you look at it, you can get that by insert library pass, and then underneath format you can find remove white space. And all basically it does is look for any white space, our special variable for white, and then remove it. But this normally comes with root, like this. So I have changed it from root to line, because if you look in the tree over here, in the tree here that used before, sorry about that, this is the tree before, you can see that it has spaces here. And then if you have remove white space that looks at lines, in the lines, it will remove the white space. So you can see it has all the white space, and that's gone now, because we want to write easier rules later on that don't have to deal with white space. So that's what the next pass 7 does. Pass 8 is a dictionary. Now pass 8 in the dictionary is simply going to look at words that we want to define. And in this case, we don't use the dictionary in NLP++, which has a separate dictionary type of tokenizer. We're just using the regular one. So because this is a demo, oftentimes I'll make a pass called dictionary and just throw the words into it so that we need for the particular analyze. So we're going to look up, when we can find the word Fred, Sally, he, and she, we're going to add each of these to our tree, our syntactic tree, and to the knowledge base, and we'll show you how. So let's look at the text here when we run it, where you can see that it matches Fred. You can see here Sally, she, Fred, he, and she. So that goes through all the lines and matches these. And what does it do? It does a couple of things. One, we create Fred, we say that's a name. We then give onto the name of the attribute, we add the attribute gender to name underscore name, and then we go and add this person. We pass it the pointer to the knowledge base. Now, if you have to look at our tutorials before, and one's on the variables in NLP++, and the context variable will go get the concept from line. Now, we've made this ourselves. Concept is the name I chose. So it's going to go and get the sentence concept. So sentence 1, sentence 2. So for Fred, that's sentence 1. This is the pointer into our temporary area of the knowledge base called sentence 1. We then hand it the name Fred, that it's male, and that the part of speech is noun. Now we hand the same thing for Sally. Sally is female, and we keep that on her name in the tree, and then we pass Sally, female, noun, to the function add person. We're going to look at that. But first, just look what we have, the rules here. Here we are going to add the person. I'm going to call it a person. Yes, it is he and a male, but it's a pronoun. It isn't. It's not a name. It's not a name of somebody. So this is just a pronoun, and we keep the gender male all in this is kept in the tree, in the syntactic tree. Same thing with she. So let's take a look at the function. We got to go back to pass 4 to look at my function for add person. So if you remember, let's take a look. Let's put the let's see, we're down here in the dictionary. So we're going to look at over here, the tree. All right. And so what we're doing is, oh, that's the tree for the dictionary. So we're going to look at the tree for the dictionary. And you're going to see that we've matched name. Well, what's happening here? When we match Fred, we're going to construct this name. And then you remember what I said, we're going to make a gender male, and then we're going to add person's going to return this concept, and we're going to attach it here. So what do we do in the add person? Well, we take the sentence 1, and then we add, then we make a concept onto that sentence with the name. So let's take a look at the knowledge base there. So here's sentence one. We're going to make a concept right there. Name is Fred. Remember, we passed Fred into it. So it's going to build that knowledge, that concept, Fred. And we're going to keep that here. Okay, then we're going to add to that concept the part of speech that we passed in and the gender, so that it makes this noun and it makes this gender. So it adds those attributes, string attributes to Fred. So remember, we're trying to keep track of these things. Then if it is a noun, we're going to say, wait a minute, that's a real person. So we're going to add a person into our long-term memory. Oh, we found Fred. That's a real person. Let's keep that in a long-term memory. Hey, we're talking about a person, Fred. And we're going to add that Fred to person, the global variable person. And we're going to add that name. And then we're going to add the con value of, and we're going to make Fred point to Fred in our long term. So our short term memory is going to take Fred and have a pointer in our bookkeeping to the name, the person Fred, the long term memory. Okay. And the other thing we do then too is add gender to this person, because we already know that Fred is male. So we know that in our mind. So we've read that first sentence. We go, oh, Fred, that's a person, and he's a male. And then we're going to keep him in our bookkeeping, because later on we're going to find he, and we need to be able to refer to Fred or Sally. Okay, so that's what this add person does. Add person. And if we look at the knowledge base right after, like I said, you can see we've added Sally here. We've added Sally up here, and this points to Sally. Now the interesting thing here is when we add person, the pronoun, when we get to line 20 here, it says, oh, are you a noun? Because if you are, we're going to add you here. This is why you don't see she up here, because she in the long run is not a person. It's a concept that we use only as an anaphora in specific text. That's really important. Okay, and you can see he doesn't have a pointer and she doesn't pointer. But we have Fred here in the third sentence, and of course that also points to Fred. You can have multiple Freds in text that point and that refer to this Fred person. Okay, so that takes care of the dictionary and adding both the names and the pronouns to our knowledge base. Now we're going to go on to a new past 10, where we're going to look at attributes. Now when we look at the text here, you're going to see, let's just match with the attributes. Look at what they're matching the attributes. Well, we're matching things like is a rocket science, is a lawyer, is married to, is 55 years old, is 57 years old. So when we look at this, here's is a lawyer, or is a rocket scientist. This will collect is a, and then everything to the end. So it says is a, everything to the end is rocket science. Is a, everything to the end is lawyer. And then when we get that, we're going to make an attribute in our tree, and we're going to attach the text for that in the attribute in our tree only. You notice we do not call a function or add it to the knowledge base. We're only dealing with the tree itself. So is a rocket, what we're going to be doing is we're going to take rocket scientist and add that to an attribute is to, and attach it to the attribute, because these things don't need to be in the, we're not keeping track. We don't have to go through and look up what this is somewhere else in the text. We don't have Anaphora. The only reason we do use the sentences, the only reason we use these sentences is in our knowledge base is to try to figure out these pronouns. So we're not, that's when we're doing the attributes, we're not going to worry about that. We're only going to put it in the tree, only in the tree. So you can see here's an attribute, is a rocket scientist, is a lawyer. So you can see is lawyer, is rocket scientist. Down here we have a rule for the number of years, how old they are. You can see attribute here is 55 years old. We take that second number text, we put it in age. So you can see here we have age 55, and down here in the attribute we have age 57. So that's how that works. But we don't modify the knowledge base in any way. If you look at the knowledge base, it's going to be just the same as the knowledge base before. We haven't done anything here. So the next pass is pass 11. and that's resolve pronouns. So this one, let's take a look at the matching, what happens here. So basically in this pass 11, we look for pronoun. There it is, it matches pronoun, she, he, and she. And then when we match, we simply call a function that will add this to the knowledge base. Here's again, the sentence, whatever sentence is in, whether it's in this case it would be sentence 3, sentence 4, sentence 5, we have that pointer to the concept from the line. We're going to pass that there. And we also have a concept for pro that we have in our knowledge base. You notice that these are our open parens and not angle brackets. That's because when it's in green and in open parens, it means that we've matched it, but we didn't reduce it. You notice we don't do anything here. If in the post area, we'd have to have a single here, and that would then make this pro go under whatever here. But we don't want to do this. All we want to do is when we see a pronoun, let's go into our knowledge base and try to find the name which this pronoun refers to. So we're going to do that. So let's take a look at the knowledge base here. So we're going to take a look at the knowledge base before we call this, and we're going to take a look at the knowledge base after we call the resolve pronoun, so we can get an idea of how it works, and then we'll look at the actual function. So here's before we call resolve pronoun, and you have here a pronoun with no pointer to anything. You notice that the names point to the Fred and Sally, here, here, and here, but the pronouns don't have any. We don't have where it's pointing to. Whereas if you look at after we call resolve pronouns, you can see that she is actually pointing to the person Sally in sentence 2. And here he is pointing to Fred now. You can see it's added the person Fred in sentence 3. There it is, Fred. And finally, the she here goes and points to the person Sally way back in sentence 2. Okay? So how do we do this? Well, when we get and we look at the resolve, let's take a look at the function. Again, we have to go back to pass 4 and look at the function resolve pronouns. Okay? And we're going to look at how we do it. So we're going to use this one that's already done, but we're going to talk about how that works. So what do? We pass the sentence in, sentence 1, no, let's go see, sentence 3. The first one that has a pronoun, sentence 3. So in sentence 3, we look at, okay, we're going to go get to the next sentence. So we got sentence 3, but for the pronoun, we got to start searching for a real person, a noun that's a feminine noun, a female noun. So how do we do that? Well, we have a function in NLP++ called previous, which will take the concept and go back to its siblings, go backwards. So here is sentence 3. We're going to now get sentence 2. So sentence now is looking at sentence 2. And we're going to loop through those sentences backwards. Previous one, previous. So we're going to look backwards until we match and find a noun with the same gender. So it says, do we have something in sentence 2? Sentence 2, do we have something underneath it? Because some sentences, in some cases, won't have anything. So we have to check for that. Yes, we have we have something in it's Sally. We're going to look down and get that. So now this L child, local child, is pointing to Sally. Again, we got to think visually in our brain here. Okay, here's in our bookkeeping. So we are now with Sally, and then we're going to loop through any of these. For instance, sentence 3 has 2, but this only has 1. That's fine. The first thing we check is it a noun? Because if it's a pronoun, we're not going to point a pronoun to another pronoun. We want to find the noun that it's pointing to. So first of all, is Sally a noun? Yes, it is. Second check in this is the gender of this Sally the same as the gender of the pronoun that we passed in. And you can see that we went and got the gender up here and kept it in a local variable pronoun. So it says, is the gender the same as this gender? If it is, great. We're going to add the concept person here. And in that person, we're going to add a pointer. A concept can have a pointer that points to another concept. So that's what we're doing. We're going to add concept value. We're going to add to the pronoun concept the person and the child. In this case, remember, child is Sally. So now that will make person she is now pointing to Sally here. Now we do the same thing for he. He will then look back, sentence 3, go through here then through each of the children. The first child is she. Is that a noun? No, it isn't. Well, we go to the next child and go and look. Okay, is that a noun? Yes, it is. Does that have the gender male? Yes, it does. Therefore, create a pointer to that child, meaning to the name. So he is now pointing to the name Fred. That is in sentence 3, Fred. And we do the same thing with she. It's a little bit more interesting here because we look at the first sentence, the sentence before it, and we go through and find, nope, pronoun. Go up here. Oh, this is pronoun. Nope. We look at Fred. Oh, here's Fred. Is it a noun? Yes. Does it match the gender? No. So we go to sentence 2. Does it have a child? Yes, it does. Salary. Is it a noun? Yes. Is it a female? Yes. Okay. So this she points all the way back to sentence 2. So that's the resolved pronouns. And then we display that again, and you can see, and we're just going back, that in fact we were talking about that. That's what 12 is. It's just displaying and remembering that. How do you display it? Well, you have this display KB. You can look it up the functions. It's one that I built, which is simply to use a function from KB Funcs called display KB, which you can display. And 1 means detailed. 0 means more brief, but we want to print it out in a detailed format. The last pass is people attributes. Now, this is really important to talk about conceptually. We're going to look at the tree here. Now, these attributes are like Fred is a rocket scientist, and we could have this in the same sentence. For instance, we could have Fred is a rocket scientist and Sally is a lawyer. Now, if you were to just take these things and throw them into the sentence here, if we were just to throw into the sentences into our knowledge base, all the attributes, you notice we don't have the attributes here. Well, that's because in syntax, in languages, order matters. In English, order matters. In many European languages, order matters. But some it doesn't. You can say things that are different. You can say them in different orders and it's the same thing. Some language you can say ball, kick, John, and you'll know did the ball kick John or John kick the ball. And you can put them in any order. But in English specifically, and many other languages, it's the order. So when you say Fred is something, it's Fred has to be in a certain order. And that's why we have the attributes, and we look at the attributes in this particular pass in order. Okay, for instance, this is what we'll pick up here. We'll pick up the second rule. So it says a pronoun or a name has this attribute because we know what these attributes are. That is in order in English. In this particular example, this is simplified. You have name and then an attribute after it that relates to that name. So this is the way we know in English that these things are related. Okay, and then we add attribute to that. And this is where we get a lot of fun. So we're going to take a look at this. But we also have, and we'll talk about right now, just how this parses is married to. So you can see pronoun, married, name. So pronoun or name married to a name. This will then add a relationship. So we pass it the name or pronoun 1 from the first node, and then we pass the third node, and then we give it this relationship called married. So if it was if we had some different processing here where a relationship was divorced, then we could also pass this. And so we're going to look at both add attribute and add relationship. And this is this is where this is where we're going to see how we can use the knowledge base to resolve these things. So let's go ahead and look at this function attribute, which are my functions that I wrote. So we're going to look at add attribute first. So remember, we're passing in the concept like Fred, and then we're passing in the node. In this case, would be an attribute that says is a rocket scientist. Okay, so this passes in the node. This is a concept in the knowledge base, and this is a node in the tree. This is how you can use these two things together. So if we have Fred, we're going to take a look at the knowledge base. So if we're pointing, if we're pointing to a person con Fred, in this case, the first sentence, Fred, we're going to look up that person. So we have Fred here. How do we look up the person? Well, I wrote a function called lookup person. So now we have the Fred here, this Fred in our sentences. Is it a concept? Yes. Does it exist? Yes, it does. And so if it does, we'll say, is it a pronoun? No. Fred is a noun. So if we don't do this, we don't have to do an extra step here. Because if it's Fred, we know it's going to point directly to Fred up here. So then we'll go ahead and just look at Fred, go get the person concept, and return that. So now this lookup person looks up and returns Fred. So now we have Fred here, the real person in our long-term memory, Fred. And then we add an attribute, a unique string. This is a KB function that we have that basically adds a unique string. That is, if you added it a couple times, if had in the sentence his age, it wouldn't add it 2 times to his age here. You wouldn't see age 55, 55, 55. It would just add it once. So that this says add a unique value string to Fed person called age and go in. This is a NLP++ function. This says parse node variable. Look at the parse node that we have here from the parse tree. We can look at the parse tree that we have here at the very first. And here's the parse tree. And it says go get the age from the parse tree. So let's go down to, because we're looking at age. He is, okay, this would be, I'm sorry. Let's not the age. We'd look at he is a rocket scientist. Sorry, we're looking at Fred in the beginning. So we're going to go get is, if it has it, and yes, it does. So in the parse tree, we have is and rocket scientist. So we're going to add to this person, going back to the knowledge base. You can look at the knowledge base here as well. And we're going to add is a rocket scientist here. We got this kind of backwards. We're going to do this first. Is a rocket scientist. So again, if we get rocket scientist and we put that as is, and that's how you get this. Now, we're going to look at something different, and that is how do we get this age? Now, in the first sentence, we don't have that age. So this add unique string says, if you have it, put it in. If you don't have it, just ignore it. So when you're doing age, in this case, in the first sentence, it doesn't have age, but it doesn't matter. This particular function says, okay, if you got it, put it there. If you don't do anything. So that's what that does. But we have one, though, is he, later on, he is 55 years old. So how does that work? So let's look at the tree, the final tree. And so he is 55 years old. Again, we're matching the add attribute, that is this pronoun attribute, and then we call add attribute. So let's go back to add, let's put the tree, the knowledge base up here. So we're down here in sentence where we have he in sentence 4. He is 55 years old. We have he, okay? So let's go back to the functions over here. There you go. And so now we're going to look up he. This is the crux of the matter here. We're going to call this lookup function. So we're getting this he. So it's now, it's passing to look up this he. It comes in here. Do you exist? Yeah. And if you do, are you a pronoun? Okay, I am. It's going to do an extra step in the lookup. It says, wait, if I'm a pronoun, I'm going to have to go get to where it's pointing to in the text. Okay, in the text. But again, this is all bookkeeping. This is in the text means conceptually. So it says, if this pronoun means, oh, this person isn't pointing to Fred, real Fred. It's pointing to a Fred in the text. So what it does, it goes and gets the concept value here of Fred. So it's going to go back and it's going to get Fred here. And then when it comes to line 62, it's no longer holding in Con Fred. It's now it's holding it in this local variable Fred. So when we have Fred, we're going to look up its con, and Fred is pointing to the real Fred. So when we pass it the pronoun, but this function says, oh, your pronoun, you got to go get the place to the real person it's pointing to in the text, and then return go get that real person, Fred. So it does, this lookup says, oh, I've got a he here in sentence 4. It's pointing to Fred. Fred points to this Fred, and now I'm going to return that. That's why you have this double step for pronouns. So this lookup person is really important. This is how we resolve we've resolved that anaphora, and we are using the lookup, the setup of our knowledge base in order to look up and get the Fred from he. So now we have Fred again, then we add, in this case, his age, and it has its age. It doesn't have is in it, but doesn't matter, it doesn't do anything. So that's how we now get age 55. Now we do the same thing for Sally. Again, we can look at the people attributes that we match. Sally is a lawyer, that puts in this. Sally is married to Fred. Let's take a look at what that does. That's add relationship. We'll take a look at the add relationship here. And this one looks up Sally, and then interesting enough, it looks up she, and then she will go and get, through here, the pronoun will end up getting Sally from she, the real Sally in our long term, and then look up Fred. That's a direct lookup of person, and we get Fred. So we get the Sally, the real person in our knowledge base. In our knowledge base, again, it points to this Sally. The pronoun will, this function will return that, and this lookup person will return Fred. So that returns Sally and Fred. We then add a pointer. Again, you can add an attribute in the concepts, in the conceptual grammar, in the knowledge base that points to another concept. So we're going to say Sally has the spouse and points to Fred. So you can see that here. We've created the attribute spouse, which points to Fred. And then the second one is we add the attribute spouse to Fred that points to Sally. So that's how you do it. So that's how we get this analyzer to understand this text just like a human. We got Fred and Sally with their titles, their age, their gender, and that they're married. This analyzer understands this text just like a human.